y'all, come look at this.
I like this. This is cute.
What's going on, Buckethead crew? My name's JMT and welcome to a tips and tricks video for Killer's Night. I feel like this video needs to get out into the public because there's a lot of people who I feel like play Killer's Night, don't know what they're doing, and end up rage quitting or just getting bored of the game because, like I said before, they have no idea what's going on in the game. Killer's Night is a new game, it's still in beta, and it might be for quite some time, which is why a lot of people who are actually discovering this game don't actually know what's going on, and I want to help you guys out and trying to play the game at a better rate and to have fun while doing it as well. Killer's Night is like another slasher type game, and there's two main goals to focus on inside of this game, because you either play as a survivor or you play as the killer. If you play as a survivor, your main goal is to fix all of the generators and try to escape outside the map while avoiding the killer as well. Or if you're playing as the killer, your main objective is to make sure that the survivors don't repair the generators for them to escape. Another way to win as well as the killer is to go ahead and actually kill every single person on the map. But let's just hop right into this tips and tricks video to kind of help out you guys inside of Killer's Night. So I'm going to have tips for not only the survivor or the killer, but for then everyone as well. I got 3 tips for the survivors, 2 tips for the killer, and then I have a tip that anyone could use, either it be the killer or the survivor. So let's jump into the survivor section of this video and let's talk about the first tip, which is looping. So looping is a strategy used by many players in these killer survival type genres or games, and it deals with the survivor being able to use either the map objectives or even terrain advantages itself to keep distance from the slasher, but not following the same path every time. Looping can be done with a wide range of patterns or even small ones as well, and a lot of people actually create loops without even knowing it. And some loops are even created by people just going in a circle around a fence, for example. It's also a good thing to mention that people have specific loops near objectives. So if you are repairing a generator and the killer happens to run into your location and start a chase, it's good to resort to a loop near you so you can stay alive and waste the killer's time, or even go ahead and actually go back to that generator for more repairing. But that's why you should always keep your vision focused on not just going to the next objective, but what's around the objective as well to help you create a loop if need be. Because it's possible the killer could get you in line of sight while you're doing a generator, and if you don't have a loop pattern in mind, if you just run off into the distance and use up all your stamina right away, it's a high chance that the killer's just going to end you off and throw you into a cage. If you guys can actually go ahead and create loop patterns on maps and learn the maps while you're doing objectives, if the killer happens to come to your location and you can go resort to that loop, they're probably just going to go ahead and give up on chasing you, or you're just going to waste their time and give the other survivors a chance to go ahead and repair those generators as well. This is a teamwork game. Okay, if you are playing as a survivor, you guys are on a team. It can't just be one person doing the objective every time. So like another tip just to go ahead and throw into this looping one is, if you're a survivor, do the objectives. But if you guys do create little loop patterns or just little loops in general as you're playing the match without even knowing, that's good to know, and you should probably keep that in mind when you do play on that map next, or if you're doing another objective, you can go run back to that location and therefore survive and be able to continue inside the game without being killed right away. Following up from looping, let's go ahead and talk about the next tip inside of Killer's Night for the survivor, and that is rotating as the survivor, finding out a rotation plan. The worst thing to do inside this game is just to randomly wander inside the middle of the map not knowing where you're going. If you're playing as a survivor, you want to play the game quite a bit because you want to learn these maps and you want to learn a good rotation pattern for where the next objectives are, even where the killer is as well, and keeping your distance from him while doing these objectives. So you got to follow this kind of rotation pattern to try to keep away, keep out of line of sight with him, but being able to actually complete the game as well and escape. So when you're having a path to follow while doing objectives, as well as staying away from the killer at all times, this is what rotating is. That's kind of like the rotation definition. Rotating is not a path that you will be following every game, because each killer has a different playstyle, of course, but learning how to counter these playstyles and keeping your distance away from them. That's what a lot of people like to learn, and that's literally the simple definition for rotation. You can't tell where the killer is at all times, of course, you know, but if you do know where the general location of the killer is, it's best to avoid that area and move on to another area that has an objective, or just to move on to somewhere else. Even if you're not near the slasher that well, but you do see him over there, just get out of that area, go somewhere else, because it's best to make sure that you're not even near the killer at all inside this game, which is why rotation is used by a lot of people. A lot of people like to rotate around the perimeter of the map, which is the outside line, and this helps you actually stay out of line of sight with the killer, because there's no reason killers search a perimeter normally, which is why it works really well. And if you are doing a generator and you spot the killer but he doesn't spot you, it's best just to still move out of that area and go on to somewhere else like we were talking about before. If you see the killer in a location, just get out of there. So this is pretty much a good example for rotation. Just staying away from the killer at all costs, whether or not the killer actually sees you. Because even if he is near a location of you, searching a house for an example, still just move to another location. This is called rotating. If you can learn a good rotation pattern inside this game and include looping inside of it, you will become a very good survivor, but it does take time and practice, which is why you need to go ahead and play the game, kind of learn the map a little bit, and learn just playing as a survivor as well if you want to master it. Moving on to the next tip of survivors, this is one that I want a lot of people to try to learn because it helps out so much. It's such an easy and simple tip, but a lot of people don't even know that it's a thing you could do, and it is try to run behind objects. While you're running away from the killer, you shouldn't just randomly run off, because this could lead to the killer being able to see you in the distance even if you were to escape. What you should try to do, instead of just running off in the nowhere if there are objects around you, try running behind those objects while still going in your path, because this way the objects cover you up, and if the killer were to look in your location, it's a good probability that the killer will be seeing the object sitting there instead of you, and this makes for a good and a quick escape. This works in many slasher-based games and actually helps a bunch of people trying to escape from the killer. Even if you are in close range with him, doing this trick can make it seem like you got away, and the killer will then change his mindset. If you can kind of figure out where the line of sight of the killer is and try to stay behind objects towards that, it'll make it seem like you just disappeared while you're still escaping. This can be very hard to learn at first, I get that, but if you just try to practice it and try to insert it into your path of escaping, it can work really well once you actually find out how to do it, which is why practice makes perfect. So get practicing. However, let's move on to the killer side of this tips and tricks video. For the first killer tip here I have cutting off a distance. Playing as the killer can be difficult for most people, especially in a game that's quite new. And if you haven't played this type of game before, then that makes it even more difficult. When you're playing as the killer, you are faster than the survivors, but it can be a hassle having to chase survivors, especially when they are granted with a stamina bar. And if you are going against players who are well experienced, it might be impossible to actually kill a certain survivor. However, being able to cut off distance as the killer will definitely come in handy. But what exactly do I mean by that? So when I say cut off distance, I am basically talking about the distance from you to the survivor while in a chase. Instead of going in a straight line towards your victim, it's best to create some paths while chasing them that can help you decrease the space between you and the survivor. Doing so involves some predictions to where you think the survivor will go, of course. So let's say you are in a chase with a survivor and you are nearing a fence ahead. It's best to say that the survivor will probably run to that location, so you can start running towards that fence to cut off some distance between you and the survivor. So if they end up going to that fence, then you can catch up quite quicker than if you were to follow their exact path towards that fence. So therefore you cut off some distance and you might actually be able to go ahead and catch up to the survivor way quicker than you were to before. But let's say you predicted that they were going to the fence and the survivor caught on to what you were doing and they changed their path. You really wouldn't be losing much ground, or any at all, that is. You can easily resort back to chasing the survivor and the path that you were just on. So doing these small predictions successfully can help you cut off distance from you to the survivor. And if you happen to make a false prediction, you wouldn't be losing much ground if you were to just go ahead and follow back on your path of chasing the survivor. It's better to go ahead and actually be risky in doing this and trying to cut off distance so you can catch up the survivor easier, and making them change their path a little bit so then they get confused as well. It's all about the mind games, okay? They might not be playing it, but you're playing it. And yeah, you're the host. I know, that was a bit cringy, which is why we're moving on. By the way, if you guys do need more explanation on that cutting off distance, because it can seem a little bit difficult to some people, go ahead, join my Discord in the description, and if you want to go ahead and DM me to try to learn more about cutting off distance as a killer, do so, and trust me, I will help you. So thank you for that. The next tip for the killer is to visit objectives frequently. So as the killer, your main focus right away should be the generators, and not trying to kill everyone, not trying to find people and trying to target them and kill them and put them in. That should not be what your main objective is inside of Killer's Night. Your main objective should be the generators and trying to make sure that the survivors are not repairing the generators. Because if you are wasting your time as the killer trying to chase one guy, it's safe to say that there's other survivors out there who are actually repairing generators and getting them completed while you're wasting your time on this one dude. There is another way to win without actually killing everyone, and that's by preventing them from repairing the generators in time. Only to the killer are the generators highlighted to you, so you can easily tell where they are on the map. It's good to go ahead and actually rotate towards these generators to keep survivors off of them. them. One thing that is bad is camping a single generator. And if you do camp a generator, it's possible that the survivors can easily rotate towards other generators and complete those, which is like what I was talking about before. Even if you're camping a generator or trying to chase a survivor as well and trying to kill him, it's safe to say that other survivors have already rotated to other generators and they're completing them as we speak. So which is why it's best to go ahead and actually keep active as the killer and be aware of your surroundings at all times. Trying to go ahead and actually rotate towards these specific generators or any generators at all, that is, and keeping people off of them. And the last tip and trick I have for this video applies to both the killer and the survivor. And this is a big one. So go ahead, listen, turn up the volume inside your headset, guys, because this is going to surprise a lot of you, okay? There are crows inside of this game.
Did you forget about me?
Oh my gosh, what? There's crows? A lot of people don't even know about this, okay? Killer's Night is the only game in Roblox so far that actually has an audio cue of movement inside of the game. And what I mean by that is actually running into something that will then cause noise and tell other people where you are on the map. There's crows on every single map all over the place. Killer's Night provides this in-game audio clue so that if you do run into these crows, they'll make noise and they'll fly away, and it pretty much lets everyone know, hey, there's a dude over there. Now, of course, if you are on the other side of the map, you probably won't hear someone if they do end up hitting this audio cue, but it is pretty loud, so you could be in a general area and then it'll tell you where an actual person is inside the game. And this works for both the survivors and the killer. So the only way to go ahead and actually avoid these crows is just to not walk into them or to sneak through them. And sneaking is what the crouch is inside for this game. The reason you have crouch inside this game is not just for crouching, of course, and trying to hide behind objects, but for sneaking as well. If you crouch through crows inside this game, they will not activate. You won't disturb the crows, and they won't make noise of where you are. There are not a lot of people who do this, and if the killer is smart about it, then he can go towards the location of where people are based off of the crow disturbance audio cue, and it could be vice versa. If you are playing as a killer and you didn't know this, and the survivors are actually paying attention, it'll let them know where you are, and therefore they can use that rotation like we were talking about before, and staying away from you. So if you want to keep hidden inside this game, avoid the crows. Anyways, guys, that's all I have inside this tips and tricks video. If you guys have any tips or tricks that you want to talk about inside of Killer's Night, leave them in the comment section down below, because trust me, it will help out a bunch of people, and I want to go ahead and try to help out these people as well, so you guys can have a fun time playing this game and actually learning to be greater inside this game as well, and build up the player base for Killer's Night. But that's going to be it for me, guys. My name's JMT, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.